Geek Therapy Radio.
Welcome to the Geek Therapy Radio podcast. I am your mental curator, Johnny Hemberger. I'm trying something a little bit different this week, starting kind of a new schedule of how I release podcasts, because what was happening was that on Fridays, things would kind of pile up. Fridays, the end of the week is usually when I record the broadcast. In that format, I have to stick to a very strict timing schedule. So the first segment is 8 minutes. Basically, the segments go in terms of minutes: 8, 10, 11, 10. So that's about 30. That is 39 minutes of content right there for the broadcast. But I also have to keep, I've got to think about the daily podcast. So towards Friday, the end of the week, things kind of pile up, and I'm retooling the timing of when I release things, because what was happening is that, let's say I release the Friday daily podcast, and then release the broadcast podcast. I know this is confusing. The next day or the same day, or let's say I upload the broadcast podcast on Monday along with a daily podcast on Monday. The two things kind of colliding. I got to figure out how to give them space to breathe. So one of the things I'm working on here is, for instance, I'm recording this podcast in the morning. Today, I usually keep these evergreen, but today is January 28th, 2020, the anniversary of the Challenger explosion. I'll acknowledge that in a moment. But I'm recording the podcast in the morning so that I can have it uploaded by preferably the afternoon, not way back, but when I started the daily podcast, I said that I would try to release it by 4 p.m. every day, Central Standard Time. That hasn't happened. That was an impossibility. I couldn't figure out how to make that happen. For that to happen, I would have to be doing the podcast at work, and I can't record too much at work. There has to be a very, very special setup and stars aligning that gives me any sort of time to devote to recording these podcasts at work, recording any content at work. Basically, shows have to be pre-recorded. Hosts have to be gone. It's a very special circumstance of events. Plus, when I record at work, I'm at work, I'm running a radio station. So the entire time that I record anything, I have the radio station in my ear, constantly monitoring the radio station. One of the things we learn how to do very well in radio is orally multitask. We can listen to many sources of audio and keep tabs on what's happening on each source of audio. When you look at a radio station mixer board, and I should do a video of that at some point, but of what I do for my job. But when you look at a radio station mixer board, it's not a mixer like a band mixer, like you're mixing a band. It's not like channel 1 is the kick, channel 2 is the snare, channel 3 is the hi-hat, 4 or 5 overheads, left and right, what have you. Bass guitar, regular guitar, acoustic guitar, vocals, all that good stuff. It's not a mixer like that. You're not mixing instruments. What you're doing is monitoring different sources of information. So on one of the pots, I might be monitoring ABC. On another pot, I might be monitoring Fox. On another pot, I might be monitoring NBC. While I'm listening to the news anchor do the news live in the studio, and while I am also keeping tabs on what's the next show coming down the network that we're going to broadcast. So, no, it's not usually all the time where you're listening, constantly to multiple sources. But I would say at any given moment, it's highly likely that I'm monitoring at least 2 sources. When things really get going, when the gears really start turning and the juices really start flowing and we have breaking news and big events are happening live in real time, I'm listening to a lot of things. Holy crap. During Hurricane Harvey, that was... So I've been in radio for probably going on 10 years now. Yeah, going on 10 years now in 2020. I think I started in spring of 2010, I believe. I have to look back through my records. But Hurricane Harvey in 2017 was by far the most chaotic, high energy, constant stream of motion that I've ever been involved in. And I was doing... What was I doing? I was working the overnight shift for the storm. So what would happen is I would go in to do my shift, 8 or 9, maybe sometimes 12 hours of constant hurricane coverage and just being bombarded with callers from around the region who were affected by the storm and looking for help. Also talking to disaster control and talking to city officials, while also running EAS alerts, the constant flood warnings and flash flood warnings and tornado warnings, just incessant. They just did not stop. I struggle to count. There was so much happening that basically within 1 minute of stepping into the shift, my mind was it was like a Zen state. Not a comfortable Zen state, but just a constant stream of information and constantly keeping everything together. Those EAS tests that were happening they were happening so often that they would stack on top of each other. People would be sending out warnings for us to relay, and they would just stack on top of each other, and it was just impossible to I'm sure there are one or two that probably slipped through the cracks just because when we're airing one, another one's coming in underneath, but the machine isn't catching it because it's actively doing something else. It's actively airing the active warning. There's so much going on, and it's important because the FCC can fine you, millions of dollars if you get the EAS wrong. You have to do it in just a constant stream of information. And like I'm saying, I don't even remember where I was going with that. Just that the radio mixing board is different than an audio mixing board. Oh yeah, so I was just painting the picture of how a radio station works. And the Hurricane Harvey example was the most extreme example of how little time you can have to do other things while you're at work. Now, during slow news cycles, when there's not much going on and there's no disasters happening and you're not all fired up, there's more time to do side work, to upload other shows' podcasts, to help the newsroom with whatever they need, to edit the logs for the next day, start manipulating the content for the radio station that's coming up the next day or for the next week, airing different contests, audio, and all sorts of different things. So it's not always easy for me to record a podcast or any content at work. The stars have to align. Like I mentioned, hosts have to pre-record their shows. There has to be a little bit of give, a little bit of space in the workday to do that. So anyways, readjusting the schedule here, trying to make it all work out. The other thing is I didn't want to come home from work to my wife and say, I still have to record a podcast today. So I get home around 9 p.m. and I don't want to continually just tell my wife, hey, I got to go to work for another hour at least, at bare minimum. It takes time to put these things together. So I'm trying to parcel it out. Recording the podcast audio this morning, I may edit it together here and there at work. So by the time that mid-afternoon rolls around, I'll have the finished product and able to put it out there for you guys to listen to, while still allowing space for the broadcast podcast I just uploaded yesterday. Give that enough room to breathe and get the listens that it needs to without being skipped over. And give you guys opportunity to stay caught up. I don't want to be putting out 2 podcasts in a row within a few hours of each other and just getting you all kind of bottlenecked and have a backlog of things. I want you to have your chance to listen to these. And I very much appreciate that you do listen to these. So the meat and potatoes of what I wanted to talk about today, or at least touch on, is that I feel that I'm being bit by the music bug again. For those of you who don't know, my first geek thing is music. It is by my studio is set up to record music. I have my guitar amplifiers in the closet set up and ready to be mic'd. I have a wall of guitars here with all of my acoustic guitars and electric guitars and mandolin and my wife's ukulele. It's all set up to record in here. Keyboards I have in here, like musical keyboards. I'm looking at my melodica over there. What else do I have in here? All sorts of music interfaces. But I haven't recorded anything in a while. The last thing I think that I recorded in earnest was a duet with my wife. But I haven't recorded anything since. And one of the things that my wife and I wanted to do when we moved into the house was do a lot more recording, a lot more duets. But it takes time for things to settle at the house. There's always things to do. When we moved in just over the summer. There's always things to do. Not even counting, you have to go over the music. You have to kind of go over the arrangement. If it's a cover, you have to kind of think about how you're going to cover it. There's work that goes into making music, even if it's a cover. If it's a cover song, there is significantly less work, obviously, because you're not bogged down with writing the music and creating the song out of thin air. With a cover, it already exists, and basically what you do is you have to arrange it instrumentally and vocally, because you're not going to record a song. Let's say if there's a song with a lot of drums and bass and different elements into it, and you're going to do a duet with your wife and just have an acoustic guitar and some layers there. Got to figure out how we're going to do it. I will mention this. The bump, because I'm in this musical kick, and it's because I've been watching and listening to a lot of Foo Fighters. I'll just be real honest with you. I'm on this kind of Foo Fighters kick. One of the things that the Foo Fighters and Dave Grohl do often is they release, especially on YouTube, so much live stuff, so much behind the scenes stuff. Dave Grohl is all about old school rocking, just in a garage. Wasting Light was recorded in a garage. Little caveat with that. Dave Grohl said, why not record it in the garage and record it to tape? And it made it seem like it was a simple thing, like it was old school, recording a rock album to reel tape. Yes, that is awesome. That is cool. That is a stripped down way. And in many ways, it's a lot harder. But the way I think a lot of people confused it is that Dave Grohl just wanted to record Wasting Light, which came out in 2011, I want to say. A lot of people thought, he's just going to set up his old little Tascam Porta Studio 4-track cassette recorder and record an album like that, which, don't get me wrong, would have been awesome. I would love to hear a band at the height of its career, like Foo Fighters, record an entire album, or at least an EP, just on the most stripped down, basic, bare bones, how they got started technology of an old school cassette tape put into a 4-track cassette recorder. You put Taylor Hawkins drums on channel 1. You put vocals on channel 2, or no, bass. Yeah, here's how I would do it. Let's get nerdy with this a little bit. I would put the drums on channel 1. Actually, yeah, with a 4-track, with the only 4 tracks. Here's how I do it. I would put drums on channel 1, bass guitar on channel 2. I would put the electric guitars on channel 3. No. Yeah, electric guitar on channel 3 and vocals on channel 2. So drums 1, bass 4, guitars 3, vocals 2. The 2 outer tracks, here's the reason why I'm choosing like this, because I want to give space for the bass-heavy drum set and the bass-heavy bass guitar to be separated. So there's not a whole lot of bleed over into the other tracks. Now, it's hard to do with a 4-track tape recorder because every track is going to be, there's almost no spacing between the tracks. But that kind of low energy, the stuff, that audio signal that has a lot of low energy, that bleeds a lot. That can spill over. There's a lot of magnetic energy that can spill over to the adjacent track. So you try to keep the bass signals separated on the tape. When you have a 16-channel reel-to-reel or a 24-track 2-inch tape reel-to-reel, You can put, a better practice would be to put kick drum maybe on track 2, away from the edge. Put the bass guitar over on track 6 or 7, far away from track 2, and just have the low energy stuff really separated. And then you have the lower energy, mid-range, high-range stuff kind of in the middle. You can put more things next to each other, but you want to give high energy content space between itself on the tape. So that's a little bit of recording theory. I went to recording engineering school when I lived in California, and that's where I learned all of this stuff. And I actually learned how to use 2-inch reel-to-reels. We had 48 tracks total. We had 2 Otaris. That gets confusing on Geek Therapy Radio because I talk about Atari a lot, the computer and video game company. In the recording studio world, 2-inch track tapes, a very popular machine, is made by a company, I don't know if they're still around, but was made by a company called Otari, Otari. Otari. So I learned how to use those 2-inch tape machines. I learned how to bias each tape machine. We used to play back. There was it's really cool, and I love geeking out about this stuff. One of the reel-to-reels had like a test tracks to it. We would also use a tone generator on the board. The sound console we used in sound school was it a Neve or an SSL? And I know a lot of you audio geeks and audiophiles out there are just, your mouth started watering just at the name of Neve and SSL. I want to say in Studio A, the main studio we used, it was an SSL. I don't remember the exact model of SSL. This was the same studio that Frank Zappa built, the studio in North Hollywood. Frank Zappa himself recorded at the studio all through the 70s and 80s, I believe, at the studio. Olivia Newton-John recorded there. Elton John recorded there. It was a major studio. This is what I had the privilege of learning at 5 days a week for a year, 4 or 5 hours a day. So the SSL board, back to calibrating the 2-inch tape machine. Tone generator. These big boards, this board probably cost $200,000 easy. And you think that's a lot of money for a soundboard. I've held microphones in my hands no bigger than a small screwdriver. They're called pencil mics, and they're what you use on the overhead of drum kits and acoustic guitars and various other sources. But basically as big as a fat Sharpie, a fat marker, that's cost $200,000, over $200,000, just for a little big Sharpie-sized, marker-sized microphone, $200,000. So yeah, big soundboard, 10 feet long or whatever it was, $200,000, but it had a tone generator, and you generate the tones, 10 kilohertz, 1000 hertz, and 100 hertz. And the 10 kilohertz, you would bias the high frequency settings on each card of the 24 tracks of the Otari machine. You'd overbias it, you twist it clockwise. You would get it to 0 dB on the meter, and you keep turning it from there. You keep turning it clockwise until it goes up into peaking, and then you keep turning it the same direction until it comes right back down to 0. That was the way you calibrated each of the frequency spectrum of the card. So you do that for 10,000 hertz, 1,000 hertz, and 100 hertz. So high-end, mid-range, and bass. And for a tinkerer like me, for a geek like me, that was just... It was a dream. It's no surprise. I did bad in school in general. But I graduated from sound school, perfect attendance, and the highest grade in the class. That's how much I loved going to sound school and working on all this stuff. So all that to go back around to finish my point about Foo Fighters is that I would love, my phone alarm just went off, is that I would love if the Foo Fighters actually did go back and record an entire album on a little rinky-dink Tascam Porta Studio. 4 channels on the tape, that's all you got, record an album. What people got confused with when they recorded Wasting Light, and I still believe that was 2011 when Dave Grohl said, I want to record in my garage to tape. Really, what that meant was bring in hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not millions of dollars worth of recording equipment, and yes, set up the bass, or set up the guitars and stuff and the drums in his garage next to his kids' Power Wheels and toys and record in that space. But they treated that space. They put bass traps in the garage. They did some sort of sound control in that garage so that it wasn't just a big echoey, reverby mess. Now, here's the thing. They purposefully left some of the room, quote unquote, in that recording. They didn't go into their garage and completely cover up all the drywall. They left enough strategically placed bare drywall so you could hear that it was in a garage, but still be able to control the sound for the mix. If you didn't do any of that for your recording, let's say you just set up the drums in a bare, naked, blank garage with a concrete floor and bare drywall. You hit that snare drum and it would echo for seconds bouncing around. There would be a massive, huge echo of that garage when you hit any instrument. And you might think, well, that's fine for the drum sound. If only the drums have that. Well, it's a nightmare. I can tell you recording drums that way is a nightmare, but that's not even half the story. Now, let's say you've recorded the drum part in that big echoey, reverby garage. Now you're going in to do a bass part in that same big echoey reverb guitar garage. Now you're doing the guitar parts in that big echoey reverby garage. Now you're doing all the vocals in that big echoey reverby garage. What you wind up with in the mix is several tracks, 16 tracks, 18 tracks, however many overdubs you do, however many tracks you lay down, of big, huge, echoey garage. And when you play that back, all you hear is echo. You cannot distinguish anything from anything else. It is all just slathered in big, buttery, greasy echo that makes everything indistinguishable from each other. So when Dave Grohl said, let's record in my garage to tape, yes, they did that, but they brought in hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of gear and microphones and mixers and 16-track tape machines, and they treated the garage somewhat so that they could get a control. They can hear the garage, especially in the drums, but be able to control the sound and have it mixed together so that it's not just all you hear is garage. It's really fascinating, and I'm getting bit by the bug to record. So I think what I'm going to do is the bump music you heard. Well, actually, I'll just keep it simple. Maybe I'll keep a duet that my wife and I have done for another day. Maybe tomorrow's. Who knows? Sometime soon I'll use that as bump music. But for today, the bump music in and out is just an instrumental cover I did of a Foo Fighters song called Walk, which Walk was actually on that album, Wasting Light. Wasting Light is one of the best albums Foo Fighters ever produced. I bought it on vinyl as soon as possible because he recorded the entire track and mastered it and everything on tape. It didn't touch a computer. It was recorded to tape, mixed on tape, mastered to tape, and the vinyl master, when you buy the vinyl record of it, no part of that has touched a computer. No part of it has been digitized. So that's one reason why I had to have that vinyl. I must have that vinyl. So I bought that vinyl, and you put that vinyl in a record player, and since nothing is digitized, it sounds like the band is in the room with you. The same sound wave that Taylor Hawkins' bass drum made when it was laid down is coming out of your speakers, unmodified, unchopped up digitally. It is pure analog goodness. So for the bump music in and out today, this will be my cover of Walk, instrumental. I can't scream like Dave Grohl, so I haven't done the vocals on it. It's just my instrumental. I recorded it to my tape machine, my 688 Tascam 8-track cassette tape machine. So it is 100% analog, other than it's digitized for digital release, but it was recorded to a tape machine, just like they recorded Wasting Light. Just instrumental. The drums I did with my fingers, just tapping out the kick and the snare and arranging it like that. But bass is me, guitars are me, everything is me. And it's just, I'm getting bit by the bug. I want to record more rock music, more duets with my wife. So stay tuned for all of that. I'm going to have to run to work now. It's 11:25. I got to go. So I will talk to you guys and gals tomorrow in the next Geek Therapy Radio podcast. I forgot to mention, that you are worthy of love, you're worthy of giving and receiving love, and you are worthy of your own self-respect. One of the ways I think that we can do that is by leaning into our geek thing and engaging in rekindling old hobbies, engaging in new hobbies, things that better our lives and make us realize day by day, little by little, that we are capable of good things and that we are worthy of love. So with that, take care. Sorry I'm in a rush. God bless the Challenger crew on this day. 1988, 86, the Challenger, the cost of space exploration. So just remember that today. This is a somber day for geeks. I'll talk to you all tomorrow. Take care.